everybody, and welcome to the Bundesliga show. It's great actually turning around again and saying welcome to the football review show with myself, Gav Mack Alex Osborn, and we've got Florian Wolfum as well. And you'll be like, who's Florian Wolfum? Well, I met Flo in a boozer at the end of last season. In fact, I think it's our year anniversary this weekend.
Yeah, kinda. I believe it was like end of May when there were the. No, it was in the beginning of May. We already had our year anniversary, like 5th or 6th May. It was.
Yeah, it was the last games of the
Last
Premier League
last
season.
match day Premier League season. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, wasn't it the Aaron Ramsey when he came out and accepted those gifts at the Arsenal?
So I'm not ready to get over that yet.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Well, welcome boys to Up Top, and welcome everybody who's watching as well. We're going to be reviewing everything that's happened in the Bundesliga because football is back. Yes! Yes! Oh. I'm not excited in the slightest.
Yeah. Cheers to that.
Cheers to
that. Whoopa! I don't know where your beer is, Alex.
I drank it earlier. Let's leave it at that.
That's fair enough. That's no problem at all. Well, as I said, once again, welcome everybody. And without further ado, we've got to start with the televised game, haven't we? Borussia Dortmund 4, Schalke 0. Goal scorers were Erling Haaland after 29 minutes. Imagine Erling Haaland scoring a goal for Dortmund. Doesn't happen very often. Guerrero scored a brace, and Torgan Hazard, he also scored one just after half-time. Boys, what was your... Well, first of all, before we dip into that game, I'll come to you, Alex, first. What's it like having football back?
It feels like all the Christmases are rolled into one. Enough of this watching Gary Neville's soccer box or old Premier League highlights or old Italian highlights or German football highlights. It's enough. It's got some live action to comment on. It's great. It feels great.
Feels warm. What about you, Flo?
Yeah, for me it's the same basically. But regarding my work, it's even better because if you work for a football club and we were all suffering and a little struggling the last weeks, all the clubs in Germany, and now we have football back and have like kind of more security back. It's the best that could happen, and I hope that it will maintain for a couple of weeks, at least for the end of the season.
Brilliant. We'll talk more about your role at Leverkusen later on in the show, but let's dip into this first game. Dortmund 4, Schalke 0. Now, over the years, Schalke don't actually mind going to Signal Iduna Park and causing a bit of an upset. What are your thoughts on the game, Flo?
Yeah, I think Schalke performed like they performed 2 weeks before the Corona breakdown. So they were really, really struggling. They lack of good they have a lack of a good captain. They don't have leaders in their team, and you just saw that Borussia Dortmund has way better players than they have. And from my point of view, I don't know how Schalke managed to came to the top of the table in last winter. So now they're on the way back where they belong, I guess.
The first goal came from Erling Haaland. Alex, what were your thoughts on that goal?
It was a good move. It was a lovely finish, and it sort of highlighted what I think a lot of these early season games, these early games are going to be back like.
Feels like
I know. I think we're going to find that they've got a very much, not like a pre-season feel to them, but with players still trying to find their match fitness back. You're gonna see a lot of players probably getting tired, which is why sort of one of the notes I made from the weekend is a lot of the naturally fit athletes who play are going to stand out, and one of those for me was Hakimi for Dortmund. They kind of play him as a wing back, don't they? Sort of wide defensive player, but there was a couple of times where he made some really foraging runs down the right hand side, which were quite threatening. And Flo, I'm sure you'd have seen him on a sort of a very consistent basis this season, probably can attest to that. And he was quite instrumental in that first goal for Dortmund, providing the cross, I believe, to a lovely finish for Haaland in the end, wasn't it? Nicely let it across his body and finished it into the bottom corner.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And Hakimi is probably the best fullbacks in the Bundesliga at the moment because he combines in a great way strength and technical abilities. So said that he will go back to Real Madrid in summer, I guess.
I imagine
Yeah,
he will.
he probably will. And I mean, if he ever does come up available, I can imagine he would be quite. He would go for a lot of money because he would be pricey. But I would be surprised if Real Madrid let him go. Though it all depends on how they view. Who's there at the moment? Carvajal. So it all depends on how they view that there. But I think agree with Flo. He should be their future really down there, down that right hand side.
Reina was due to start the game, but I think he pulled up just in training. I think he was in the when you first saw the lineup come out at around 1:30 in the afternoon. He was down to start, and instead it was Julian Brandt who played, and he played in a little bit of more withdrawn role. Do you think that he was instrumental? Well, personally, I think he was instrumental yesterday. But do you think that he might have found his new niche?
I think he already had found his niche in Leverkusen, because when we got our coach Peter Bosz last year in January, he transformed him from a winger to a centre midfielder, and Julian Brandt performed quite well there together with Kai Havertz. And I was wondering why Dortmund wouldn't let him play in the centre midfield, but now as they did, you can see how valuable he is or he can be for a team.
The pick of the goals, in my opinion, was the fourth goal from Guerrero. He doesn't want to use his right peg whatsoever, does he? And he made sure of it. I mean, Hazard's goal was a joy to watch as well. I think the goalkeeper could have done a little bit better with that, but he still hit it pretty hard. But yeah, the fourth goal was beautiful. You know, little link-up play. Julian Brandt was involved in that as well. Erling Hazard. I can't get his name out. Haaland, showing that he's not just someone who scores goals. He can link up play. He can hold a ball up. He could pass. He could do everything. He's the complete striker.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback off Flo's point there about Julian Brandt, it seems to me that when he plays in a more wider role, his vision is it's very much only half used, because when you play a wide role, the only passes you can really make are infield, aren't they? But when you play him in the centre of the pitch, he's then got the wider range to use his sort of vision to be able to pick out passes to his left, to his right, going forwards. And I think you get more out of him being effectively there. Because I think I put in our group chat that he was kind of pulling the strings yesterday for Dortmund. And I was a little bit, as I say, a bit disappointed by Schalke. I thought they were just a bit too reckless defensively. And I don't know how long David Wagner's been at Schalke for. I can't imagine he's been there too long. I don't recall him starting the season as the Schalke manager. They mentioned on the commentary that they had a few issues, which you pointed to, and they also mentioned about, I think they've had a couple of issues with their goalkeeper as well. The goalkeeper was playing yesterday is not their first choice, they were saying. And they've got a few issues trying to replace him, or something along the lines of a contract dispute, or something along that. I can't quite remember what they said, but it was definitely not their first choice goalkeeper yesterday, which might explain Hazard's goal.
Yeah, they had lots of trouble with their goalkeepers, and maybe in terms of Schalke, it's good to know that it's either way very good, very high on the top, or just very low at the bottom, especially from the media and from the fans. And in summer, they had the German under-21 goalkeeper Alexander Nübel, and he played great for the under-21 team. He had a great past season, and everyone was saying this is the new German national keeper.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Naturally, Bayern Munich wanted to sign him, and his contract ends at the end of this season. So Bayern Munich signed him without any kind of fee. And the Schalke fans are quite emotionally, and they were really angry at Nübel. And after Christmas, he played very poorly. When he signed the contract for Bayern Munich, he played very poorly for Schalke, had some mistakes, and they changed the goalkeeper to Markus Schubert, who was in second league last year with Dynamo Dresden. Played quite well, was also part of the under-21 national team, but it seems like the pressure is too high for him at the moment, because he wasn't that sure before the break, and now in his first match he made this little mistake with the third goal, I believe. Yeah, they're quite suffering at the moment with the goalkeeper, Schalke.
Well, let's talk about Bayern Munich. We've just watched that game. I haven't got the graphic for that, if I'm honest with you. But Union Berlin 0, Bayern Munich 2. The goals came from from Lewandowski from the spot, and then Pavard just towards the end with a header. The first goal, well, there was a goal just beforehand, and watching it over and over again, I'm livid that it was actually disallowed. However, I have finally seen the actual VAR situation, and I fully understand why that was short off. So the first goal, it was a Gnabry header across goal, and then Thomas Muller nodded it in. The reason why I was kicking off is because it appeared to me that Gnabry and Muller were level, but what's his name? Muller's right leg, was slightly ahead of the ball, very, very slightly.
Yeah, and the ball goes forward, doesn't it? So when it goes forward, then they count it as offside. So I actually put down here in my notes.
If he was dead level, then that would have been fine. If he was level with Gnabry, he would have been fine. But he wasn't. His right leg was slightly off. So that's why.
I mean, I've actually put down here in my notes that from the games that I watched this weekend, which was about 5 or 6 of them, the ones that was shown on TV here in Britain, that there wasn't too many controversies that I can think of at all involving VAR. So I want to ask Flo, I know this is is it the second season that VAR has been used in the Bundesliga? Is it, because was it introduced last year, or is it even more longer ago than that?
No, it's like the third season already. So we had the year before World Cup 2018 was the first year in Germany, and this was a very poor year. So there was always struggling, and the fans hated. They still hate it. But at the World Cup, we saw quite a good version of VAR, and we tried to transform that to the Bundesliga, but we still didn't got it. So I don't know. It's
England always so far behind Germany with everything.
Yeah, we really are. We really are. So I was going to ask. I mean, how has it been? What's the perception of VAR been like this season?
It's definitely better than 2 years ago, but it still is. I'm not a fan of it, and it still didn't got to a huge or to a better, to more higher improvement. So VAR is still like a poor thing because you celebrate, and they still need too long to, I don't know, allow a goal or not, or to focus on the decision. Then they watch it over again, and it's not that transparent. You can't really understand the decisions of the referee. I remember when I watched the 2018 World Cup, and they showed already the scenes in the TV pictures, and you could see what the referee was watching, and we still don't have that in Germany. So that would maybe a little bit more understandable for the fans. But I believe our fans wouldn't care anyway, because every time you have a VAR decision, especially the fans in the stands, where most of the loyal fans are, hate it and are singing against VAR and are singing against German Football Association. Yeah, so it's not accepted in German stadiums. Yeah.
I was going to say it sounds very like a familiar story over here as well. So we don't want to repeat the chant that's usually sang when VAR gets involved.
Yeah, that's very true. There might be kids watching. Now, the first goal in this game came from the penalty spot. It was Lewandowski who scored it. His 40th goal in all competitions, 26th in the league. The guy is an absolute machine. He's the best number 9 on the planet right now. I don't care what anyone says. But it's Neven Subotic who gave the foul away. He didn't actually know where Leon Goretzka was. Do you think is there a little bit of harshness around the penalty being given?
I have to admit that I couldn't watch the match because I had a Zoom conference with my grassroots team, and we were talking about continuing playing football in the grassroots. So I missed most of the matches after the match time. I can't talk that much about Bayern Munich.
To be at the meeting, I'll give you that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll step in. I thought it was a penalty, even though it may seem harsh, but I definitely thought it was a penalty, the correct decision. And Lewandowski stepped up nicely and coolly slotted it away. With the Jorginho technique, with the little skip in the air, wasn't it?
Yeah, little skip in the air. I weren't a big fan of that, I'm not going to lie. But he put it away, and yeah, he's just continuing his goal-scoring record. He's an absolute monster. Pavard hit the side netting on half-time. Coman, he had an opportunity, cross or shot, I have no idea. But the second goal, I was really impressed because it was an attack down the right wing, and Pavard Well, the defenders shepherded it out, and it's going for a goal kick. It's looking good, and Pavard's found a way of getting around him and knocking it off him. And it goes out from a corner, and the goal comes directly from that corner. Lovely, lovely header, and yeah. Other than that, the game flow. You didn't really miss much. My missus, she was like, "This is the most boring game I've seen in ages." So.
Well, that's typical for most of the Bayern Munich matches. As a usual fan, not a Bayern Munich fan, you don't miss anything because most of the time they win. No surprises. No one likes them. It's
I want to
like
talk
in
about
the
Union
Sun
Berlin,
article.
though. Union Berlin, their form, it's not great. They've won 2, drawn 1, and lost 3 of their last 6 games. They're not doing too bad in the table, considering they've only just come up. But I'm worried about their squad. It's a very ageing squad. Now, they've got in their squad that they took today. I think they took 19 players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 players are over 30. We were talking yesterday because we can't go to the pub over here, of course. So we had a little group chat, me and a couple of my pals, and we were talking about German football. There's not many old players in German football, is there? It's a constant conveyor belt of young players and new talent that's coming through. There's no real old German players knocking around. So why do Union Berlin think it's okay to hoard all the old players?
I think that they don't really have like a plan for the couple of next years to develop a team because the most important for them is to stay in the league. It's their first time in the Bundesliga, and you have sometimes if you have a runner-up, they have the same strategy. So they come up and they promote in the Bundesliga, and the first they will do is just to keep the league. And they signed some older players from clubs which aren't asked anymore over there, which aren't important for the other clubs in the Bundesliga. So they're like a best of the rest team because they don't have that high budget. And I believe that's the reason why they try to focus on that many old players.
Do you think they'll struggle a lot because of the playing behind closed doors? Their fans are raucous. You know, they've only got, I think their stadium only holds something like 22,000, but they are very, very loud. Do you think this is going to be a hindrance to them?
Definitely. I've been to the stadium in February when we played there with Leverkusen. And if you have, I don't know, you have 20,000, capacity of 20,000 and 17,000 are the standing area. And like 2,000 of them are guest fans, and the other 15,000 Union Berlin fans are just screaming out loud and singing the whole time during the match. It's incredible. So it was a great atmosphere, maybe one of the best atmospheres this year. And I've been to Ibrox with Leverkusen as well. So this is definitely it's a huge dismiss for them if they don't have their fans behind their back.
And Alex, flights to Berlin are like 30 quid when lockdown's over. I'm thinking about it. I need
Well,
to. I think I might have to clear that with the missus first. I don't think it will happen, but I'll try.
I
We'll,
we
we'll
think
stay.
we'd love to go to a German game, wouldn't we? I mean, especially if the tickets are quite affordable, or so I'm led to believe, compared to what they are over here.
Yeah, they're really affordable. It depends where you buy the tickets, but if you've got like someone on the inside like me, I will show you the areas where the tickets are quite cheap, where you pay, I don't know, 20 euros for a ticket or something like that. And I believe this is something you can't compare to a ticket at Arsenal at the Emirates.
You might get a ticket for 20 quid, but it would be like a league cup match
Yeah.
against Nottingham Forest or something like that. We're going to stay in Berlin, and we're going to go to the Hoffenheim game. Hoffenheim 0, Hertha Berlin 3. I have got graphics for that, so that will be fine. It was 0-0 at half time. And all the goals came in the second half. There was Akpaguma own goal, and then Vedan Ibisevic haunting his old side on the hour mark, and then Cunha, who scored with 15 minutes to go. But Hertha Berlin are probably one of the weirdest and most unpredictable sides in Bundesliga football. Now, a lot of people will be getting on this Bundesliga wagon because it's football that's come back. But I've been following Bundesliga for well over a decade. And what I notice about Hertha Berlin when they are in the top flight is that their home form is what normally keeps them up. And it's their away form where they struggle the most. But so to go to Hoffenheim and get a result, that's That's pretty big.
It's Hertha Berlin is quite full of surprises. Usually, they're a team that are not quite interesting for the top of the league. So they usually play between rank number 7 and 12. It depends whether it's a good year or bad year. But since they are the club of the capital, they always want to improve or always have big dreams, but they can't realize it. I don't know if you had watched it or seen it in England. So they got an investor at the beginning of the season, and he said he wants to spend around 200 millions for the team, and installed Jürgen Klinsmann as head coach, and said, okay, yeah, he said Hertha is a big city club. That were his words, but they behave so poorly that everyone calls them just a big shitty club. So,
that is West Ham all over, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
that sounds like it.
The Sun mentioned that in their article. I don't know if you read it.
I did. They are definitely West Ham. They're playing in the city. You know, they're in the capital. They should be a big club.
In the former Olympic Stadium, they play.
They haven't got it.
Well, here's a question for you, Flo. My best mate Martin, who I live with, he's been a fan of German football for quite a number of years, and he was telling me that traditionally it's more of the northwest in Germany is where the sort of powerhouse is and where most of the money has been when it comes to German football, and not so much in Berlin because for some reason it just hasn't quite worked out that way. Is that the case? Is that kind of over history, that's kind of how it's played out in sort of the Bundesliga and German football in general?
Yeah, that's quite the case. In German football in general, you have huge amounts of clubs in the west and in the southwest, especially in the former Federal Republic of Germany. So these are the good clubs. And in the East German part, the clubs were all struggling after the Berlin Wall collapsed because they had no money, and all the clubs went down. So most of the East German clubs are playing now third league or second league or fourth league, but none in the first league. Union Berlin is the only club from back then who is now in the first league, and you can't count Leipzig because they were sponsored by Red Bull and they have no link to the old times. Yeah, and I don't know, Hertha was always like a little bit separate in the Bundesliga. They never managed to be on top or have a good time. And since we are a common Germany or United Germany again, they were like a grey mice, we would say, in Germany. No one looks at them. They're not interesting. Even in their own city, you have so many people living in Berlin who are not from Berlin, so they aren't interested in Hertha. Yeah, they have their clubs all over the Republic. And you have many sports in Berlin. You have like great basketball, great handball, ice hockey. So like the whole population spreads somewhere, but not for the football. You have just a couple of fans at football matches. They play in the Olympic Stadium for 75,000, but usually have 40,000 attendance. So
if that.
Yeah, that must look a strange sight to see half full. Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of being there before. It was against Eintracht Frankfurt, and there's about 35,000 fans there. Going back 4 years, tickets €15, beer €3 at the ground. You know, we can Berliner Kindle, good stuff. That is good for the soul. But yeah, let's go back to the game. Hoffenheim, they've got a little production line coming through. They've got a young lad, Max Bayer. He's 17 years old. What's his future looking like? Do you know much about him, Flo?
I have to admit I don't really know much about him, but Hoffenheim is well known for a quite good youth academy in Germany. It's their philosophy to develop young players and maybe sell them for a good price. For example, in the last year they sold 3 players to Leverkusen for an amount of 50 million euros or 60 million euros. So that's kind of their business model, because they have no alternatives. You know, the club hasn't a huge fan base. They were a grassroots club, and the SAP founder Dietmar Hopp just gave them his money, and they don't have that many fans. They have lots of clubs around them, with Karlsruhe in second league, Stuttgart a little more in the south, where the fans are going. So their niche is to develop young players, and they very often have some quite decent young players in their squad.
Alex, you might remember just before lockdown when we were doing the show and stuff, we were speaking about Hoffenheim.
I was going to say I recognise the name that Flo dropped there with the owner.
Dietmar Hopp. Yeah.
Yes, there
Yeah.
was protests against him, or there'd been protests against him.
Yeah, there have been lots of protests and huge protests in the past 15 years since Hoffenheim promoted to Bundesliga. Because for fanatic fans, for the ultras, he is like the symbol of commercialism and the symbol of a waste of money in football and the change of football to the bad side. And that's why they protest against him, why they try to bully him. But they say it's just he is the symbol, and that's the way why they do it so hard. And it's not, it should not be a personal threat to him, something like that. Although they threaten him with banners and with chants and something like that, but they don't mean it personally to him. That's their logic, because they just want to make sure that the whole system of football, or to point out that the whole system of football is corrupt and goes the wrong way. That's just those are the reasons for the huge protests.
Fair enough. Yeah, Vedan Ibisevic, he was on the he was on the score sheet, and Cunha as well. His goal, I was probably one of the pick of the goals of the weekend. Actually, won the ball by the corner flag, took his man on, and then put it in the top far top corner. I didn't realise that Cunha's only 20. Because I remember watching him at Leipzig, thinking, yeah, this guy's decent. He scored one of the best goals in the history of mankind. I think I'm going to have to find it on YouTube and stick it onto our page. But the guy's only 20. I can't believe it. Bags of potential. He's going to go very, very far. He won't be a HERTHA for the rest of his career for sure.
I believe the Cunha goal you just named, he scored against Leverkusen. I can remember that goal.
I didn't want to say. We're talking about Leipzig, so we might as well go to Leipzig. It was RB Leipzig 1, Freiburg 1. The goals came from Gulde, 11 minutes before half-time, and then Yusuf Poulsen with 13 minutes to go in the match. Before the game started, it was clear that Leipzig would win this game. You know, Freiburg, they're not exactly terrible. You know, they're not doing too badly in the league. They're 7th in the league. They're very close to a Europa League position at the moment. Leipzig, they've had a bit of a fall from grace, haven't they? They've their last 6 have drawn one. They've drawn 4 and only won 2 of those games. And towards the beginning of the season, it was like, right, is this Leipzig's year? What sort of happened with Leipzig? Why are they falling apart?
I really don't know. It seems like the winter break wasn't good for them, because before Christmas they were like head of the league and played a great season so far, and they played very constantly, and that's the key to win the German league. If Munich suffers, you need to be there every time, and you need to be there constantly, and it seemed that they were there this time. But after the winter break, as it happens so often, they had a little crush down. I don't know what the problems are actually, because they have one of the best coaches. They performed quite well in Champions League with knocking Tottenham Hotspur out. So I don't know what.
Yeah.
why
Gooners are like, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why they can't perform in Bundesliga anymore, or perform so bad. They simply don't use their chances, or don't take their chances, because they had many chances as well on Saturday.
Well,
sorry, Gav. Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to jump in there because it's I don't know whether you meant to make the link, but you mentioned the coach there, Flo, Julian Nagelsmann, if my pronunciation is correct.
It's
there.
perfect.
Brilliant, thank you. So he was obviously he was the head coach at Hoffenheim, wasn't he, before he came over to Leipzig, and it was quite a unique move from what I can understand about how they announced he was going to be their manager a full season before he actually took over. What is the public's view of Nagelsmann? Are they holding him up to be the new coming of the future German head coach? Is he because he's been linked with not just jobs in Germany, but from jobs around Europe as well. And I know that he was certainly a manager which was linked with the Arsenal job at various times in the past, and other big clubs as well. What's the view on him from within Germany, there, Flo, of Nagelsmann?
Yeah, he's seen as the next top manager, maybe the next kind of Jurgen Klopp in terms of success. Because he started with, I don't know, 28 years old. When he was 28 years old, he took the job at Hoffenheim. He was a former under-19 coach, had a great education from the German Football Association. He was like one of the best young coaches in his final year. And then he managed to improve Hoffenheim. So he first saved them from relegation. Afterwards, he established them in the table. Then he qualified for Champions League with them. He just made one improvement after another. And now the step to Leipzig is like the next logical for him, because maybe Bayern Munich or Arsenal or something like that, Man United, PSG, I don't know, would have been a bit too high. But in Leipzig, he has a project where he can develop with the project and where he aims at winning titles with Leipzig. Last year they were in the cup final, had and missed it against Bayern Munich. So I guess during the couple of next years, if he stays there and if they stay calm, they will definitely win a title sooner or later.
He definitely gets a tune out of teams. You know, in the first half of this game, in the first 15 minutes, there was a number of opportunities that they had, which were very unfortunate to miss them. In particular, Tyler Adams, Timo Werner. It was a lot of domination. That's what he sort of tends to install into his teams, isn't it? He wants to get in their faces and put a lot of pressure on.
Yeah, that's exactly the philosophy of Leipzig, and that's also the philosophy of Nagelsmann. That's why there's such a good match. He had this philosophy before in Hoffenheim, and that's why Ralf Rangnick, the former sports CEO, wanted to have him desperately in his team. And the model that Rangnick signed him and was coach for a year wasn't new for Leipzig, because he's like thinking in a bigger picture. And if he wants a coach, he focuses on that coach. And if that coach is not available in the actual year, is just a coach as well, does it for 1 year and then goes back in the role to make space for the new coach. That's what he did when they were in second league, and he promoted with them. And the year he was coach in Premier League and in German Bundesliga, I believe they finished third or something like that. So you can see Ralf Rangnick is also quite a decent coach.
I was going to mention that Ralf Rangnick almost kind of seems like not the godfather of this modern day German football, but he's certainly mentioned as being a heavy influence over managers such as Jurgen Klopp, Ralph Hasenhüttl, who's plying his trade over here in Southampton, as you mentioned now, managers like Julian Nagelsmann. Is that the kind of case that is the kind of case that he is seen in such an influential figure in German football?
Yeah, that is. If you would name someone to build the club from the bottom to the top, it would definitely be Rangnick. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but he did the same with Hoffenheim. He was installed as a manager in third league. He promoted all the way with them to Bundesliga before he changed the club, and with a little adventure in Schalke, he went to Leipzig. So definitely one of the best men in German football, one of the most competent men. But sadly, he suffered from depression like 8 or 9 years ago. That's why he stopped his job at Schalke in 2011 when they were playing really good. So I believe he was in the Champions League semi-final with Schalke, for example. Mm-hmm. Don't know if you remember the name.
They had a really good side, that Schalke side.
Raúl.
Yeah, it was Jefferson Farfan, who was about 97 years old at that point and still turning out. I think that's what happened. Back to this game very quickly. The first goal came from Freiburg, which was almost unexpected. The corner came in from Vincenzo Grifo. Everyone thought it actually went in directly off him, but it didn't. It was actually flicked off Manuel Gulde, and there it was 1-0. But it was still Leipzig. Before then, after then, they were peppering. They got their goal from a Poulsen header, but they still almost lost it in the last couple of moments. Alex, can you talk me through that?
It was a ruled out goal from VAR, wasn't it? I believe in injury time. As far as I'm concerned, which it did seem it was the correct decision in terms of, if you're going by the law of the game, it was offside. But it was one of those where it was like it seems like his kneecap was offside rather than, and it's good. Well, I say good to see. It seems like the same issues that we have here in the Premier League are the same kind of issues you have in the Bundesliga. And maybe it's an issue with the actual law of the offside as itself. Probably needs a revisiting with the
Needs
introduction of
refining, doesn't it?
technology. Exactly, yeah, because technically, as you say, he is offside, but really, was he?
I don't think there was any complaint from anybody. They were ready to take centre again. I think the only complaint from Leipzig was we should have defended that a lot better. And I
Yeah,
felt that they
yeah.
didn't, and they were angry with each other. I don't think there was any gestations towards the match officials in any way, shape, or form, but every goal has to be checked. So there it was. Let's go to Frankfurt. Frankfurt 1, Borussia Mönchengladbach 3. I expected this to happen. A nice, comfortable win for Gladbach. But I missed the first 7 minutes because I was watching an episode of Mindhunter. I lost track of time, and I was like, oh, look at the time. Right, okay, I need to turn it on. And then I turned it on. It was 2-0 already. I was like, oh, brilliant. The goals came from player, Alisson player. It's his 9th in 23 games. There's talk of him going to Barcelona in the summer. He scored after 35 seconds. The second goal from the son of World Cup winner Lilian Thuram, his lad Marcus Thuram. After 7 minutes, Ben Sebaini, he scored from the penalty spot, and he's pretty shiny himself as well. And the third goal isn't actually, the fourth goal isn't actually from Poulsen, as the graphics suggest. It was actually from Andre Silva. So Andre Silva, who he was at Sevilla. He was at Sevilla. He was at AC Milan on loan, and he got the goal to bring it back a little bit. Mönchengladbach, once again, they're another weird one. You know, they qualify for European competitions on a regular basis, but don't really do anything with it. But their squad isn't exactly a bad squad, is it?
No, they have quite a decent squad and a great atmosphere in their home stadium in Borussia Park. So it's always very difficult to win there. And I always have the impression, or had the impression when they qualified for Europe, that they weren't experienced enough to be good in Europe, and now they're on a good way again to qualify, and they're one of the positive surprises for me in the Bundesliga season this year, because I didn't expect them to be that good with the new head coach Marco Rose, but they're very stable. They're winning and winning and winning, and they're on a good way to top 4 for this year. Unlucky for my club, Bayer Leverkusen, but we still need to catch them.
Gladbach have only lost 1 in their last 6 games. You know, they know how to go out around their business and get wins.
Luckily, their next game is against Leverkusen, so really looking forward to that.
I think that's. I'm going to be looking forward to that game. Because out of all the teams that I watched this weekend, Gladbach were the team that actually played quite different to the rest of the sides. The majority of the sides were your high press, your gegenpress, you want to call it, where your high defensive line, pressure from the top, which early doors can seem a bit risky, because when your players are not fully fit, match fit, you can seem to pick your way through it. And there was a couple of times where the defending for me kind of left a lot to be desired across a number of teams, whereas Gladbach seemed to take a more direct approach, maybe not quite such a high press, but they were certainly trying to get. You mentioned his name, Alisson Play. I don't know how you pronounce it. And as you say, Thuram as well. They were to utilise those two players, and they did so to devastating effect in this game. Is that the case, Flo? A Mönchengladbach kind of a more direct team, as opposed to the sort of tradition or the standard that is now the gegenpress that's deployed by quite a number of teams in the league, or is it just a case for this game? That's how it played out.
I could have to admit I couldn't quite hear you because I had some struggling with the sound. And actually, at the moment...
Oh, have we lost Flo there?
I think we might have a little technical difficulty there. I'm sure Flo will be back in a few moments. From what I know about Bundesliga football. But you are right; they do play a slightly different way. I think they try and play football. That a lot of the other sides in the Bundesliga, that you're right, they have that. Will absorb, then just hit you with like high press. Will press from the front. Your strikers, they'll play a front three, and they'll be putting a lot of pressure on. It's very rare that a top side will be able to play. A lesser side, so to speak, will be able to play the ball from out the back very well, because the good sides will be putting that high pressure on early doors. We've just lost Flo for a few moments, but I'm sure he'll be back in a couple of seconds. I think that's him.
I think that's him. But yeah, Dortmund, Mönchengladbach. I was pleasantly surprised by them. I mean, Martin did mention to me that he thought that they would be a fairly good side to watch, and yeah, those two players, and Alassane Play and Thuram, certainly stood out as one of those players who, on this first weekend, as players to keep an eye on. Whether that's down to the fact that they're, again, naturally fit athletes. I mean, Thuram, you've got to think he's coming from good stock there from his father.
Exactly.
But some play, I don't really know too much about him. Feels like he's kind of. You mentioned that he's linked with Barcelona. Has it? I'm sure he's played in the Italian leagues, hasn't he? Before this season.
He's been around for a while. I say he's been around for a while. He's been more under the radar for a while, because he's not exactly the oldest player in the world. But he does score goals and he bags. And as I said, that was his 9th in 23 appearances. And Barcelona will be able to pick him up relatively cheap, because it's not very often that a player leaves the German league for stupid mega bucks. It can be a lot of money, but I reckon a bid of like 50 to 60 million, that would be more than enough to prize him away from Mönchengladbach. We're going to move on to another game, and hope that we'll be able to get Florian back in a few moments, because we really want to know more about Leverkusen and his role there. Augsburg 1, Wolfsburg 2. Wasn't really expecting that result. Prior to the game, I sort of was, but the way the game panned out, I wasn't expecting it. I thought Augsburg might have actually been able to do something about it. Steffens with the opener goal, Renato Steffens with a header just before half time. What a header that was. He's headed that for about 17 yards out.
It was good. It was lovely. I love a good power header.
He's used every single neck muscle in the world. Paulo Otavio with the cross. He's a Brazilian left back. I can't see him ever getting caps for the national side anytime soon, but he's all right. Does the job. Like those sort of players. They're all right. They're okay. The second goal, it was an equaliser. It was from Jedvaj. He converted after Castells failed to deal with it. The ball was almost like a bit of a goal line clearance. The ball went towards the goalkeeper. He tried to get it, and it sort of went through his hands onto the bar. I think it might have actually bounced in before it went in, but there was someone there on the line ready to put it home, and that made it 1-1. But it should have been 2-1 to Augsburg.
So I didn't get to see too much of this game. So what was the part where you're referring to? I saw the goals, but I didn't see too much.
Very similar to the situation in the Leipzig FREIBURG game. Is a player, was he in the eye line of the goalkeeper? Well, when the header was made, he ducked out the way completely. So it wasn't, for me, I don't think he was in the eye line of the goalkeeper.
Again, it's the law. Maybe it's not so much VAR, but the law that needs to be examined. I was gonna say, is Flo there with us? As obviously he's still having those technical issues there. Flo, can you hear us?
I think Flo's back.
Yeah, guys, can you hear me?
Welcome back,
yes.
son.
There we go.
Sorry for the technical difficulties.
It's okay. We have it.
We have it.
This
every
is what
week.
happens. Yeah, this is what happens. So no, we're not. Please don't feel bad there, Flo. We were just talking about Augsburg there. We were just hoping, obviously, you can come back in time so we can talk to you about your role that you have at Leverkusen, which I'm sure we're going to get onto very shortly.
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a few moments for sure. Yeah, we were just talking about the moment where Augsburg thought they took the lead to make it 2-1, but they didn't. It was ruled out by VAR. Wolfsburg did, in the end, go on and win that game. And it was Kevin Mbabu's cross. What was a beautiful cross. And at the end of it was Daniel Ginczek, and he made it 2-1. But yeah, we'll move on to the first game of this afternoon, which was Cologne versus Mainz. Now, this had a bit of everything. It was a very exciting
And
and interesting game to watch.
I thought this was very entertaining. I thought personally, for me, this was the best game that I saw this weekend.
I think this is why I've been telling people Bundesliga is one of the most exciting leagues in world football, and people need to watch it more because you don't always have to know all the players and know everything that's going on in order to enjoy it. I know a few of the players at Cologne and Mainz, and particularly one in Mainz, Ricky Quaison, Palermo legend. So, so of course I'm going to know him, but they've got like Mark Oot there and things like that. There's some names that are around, but
But
it's just
there
watching the spectacle of the game.
was the other lad that stood out to me. So I thought Draxler, doesn't he play for PSG? But it was actually Drexler,
It's
wasn't it? His name
Drexler,
was.
yeah.
Yeah. But he to me stood out. I mean, it was a lovely cross from him for the first goal, the header at the back post, where he just whipped it right across the 6-yard box, and it was a gorgeous play, But he certainly stood out along with how do you say? I know it's spelled UTH, but I don't know how to pronounce it.
Oot.
Is it Ute? Ute?
Oot, oot.
There we go. Yeah. So, yeah, I certainly like this game. Colin, being Arsenal fans, we know that's where we signed Lucas Podolski from, and that's he came through their youth side, didn't he? Before he went to Bayern Munich and then came back to them. Podolski is a little bit of a cult hero at Arsenal, I think, from his hammer of a left foot. He'd always pop up with a goal quite often, but this game was quite, I say, was a very good advert for German football, I think. And I don't know, is that Cologne and Mainz usually involved in the more entertaining games of German football? Is this kind of a usual thing for them, or is it just a case this game just happened to be that way?
Well, I'm with what Gav said before, that German Bundesliga is so unpredictable. So the same game could have been like a boring 0-0, for example, and you never know what you get if you have these teams in the middle of the league. And Cologne, for example, they had a poor start in the league. They were the last place. Everyone said they're gonna straight relegate again, and out of a sudden they changed the coach, and since then they were like second or third best team in the Bundesliga. So I believe in the last 12 games since they changed the coach, they had
Oh,
eight wins or something like that.
It was at 8 and
oh
12,
well.
isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. They performed very, very good before Christmas, after Christmas. No one expected that. And Cologne fans, they are quite euphorical fans. So they were
Yes.
saying we're going straight back to Europe again. And as I'm a Leverkusen supporter and Cologne is our big rival, so we only have 15 kilometers
I was
between
going to
our
say, it's
stadium.
down the road, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't like this development for sure.
The first goal came from a penalty. We knew that it was going to be a penalty. Referee had no decision, no mind to not give it. But then there was still a 2.5 minute wait before VAR decided that it definitely was a penalty, and that felt very Premier League. It was very, very frustrating. But then just after half time, Kainz is at the far post, lovely cross, Bosch goal. Cologne were comfortable. They had nothing to worry about whatsoever. Yet 9 minutes later, Awini, he gets one back, and then an equaliser from Kunde Malong. I he was the youth player at Atletico Madrid and didn't quite make it. He his goal, when I was watching the commentary, they were like, "Oh my god, what an amazing goal!" What were the Cologne defence and midfield thinking? He's literally just walked in a straight line past 6 people. Lovely finish, but what happened to their defence?
I couldn't watch the match either today, so maybe Alex, if you saw something, just
Yeah,
Yes.
you had the grassroots thing going on. As I said, like I will not going to argue with that. I think that's a
Yeah.
very legitimate excuse.
Yes. So no, it was this game. It's funny, as you say, Gav. Cologne were very comfortable, 2-0 up, and Mainz were looking to struggle. And then I don't know what happened, whether Mainz were not playing to their usual identity. But I mentioned to Martin there was a couple of moments before they actually scored their first goal where it almost seemed like it was kamikaze defending, where they just literally had one covering defender in the centre of the pitch, and all the other defenders are kind of pushed up in a line in front of him, and it sort of seemed to push the whole team even further up the field. And I was saying to Martin, "Oh God, if they're not careful here, Cologne could go on and score another two or three goals a stretch, but at least another goal or two to make this a real embarrassment for Mainz." But what that seemed to do, it seemed to get Mainz going, and Cologne couldn't withstand the pressure, which then obviously got those 2 goals back. And yeah, that second goal, yes, it was a very good goal. Drive and run for midfield, which again shows when you've got a player who can commit players in the middle of the park, they're worth their weight in gold. It was a very lovely finish, but yeah, you have to quite question the Cologne defenders whether they thought he was going to pass it off to another player. So they thought, well, okay, we don't really need to confront him. That seemed to me that how that came about, but in the end, he finished well.
He did indeed. The last game that we just need to cover very quickly, and it is very quickly because it finished 0-0. However, I don't think it was the most boring game in the history of mankind. It was Fortuna Dusseldorf 0, Paderborn 0. Dusseldorf have got a player who I really, really like, and I've liked him. I didn't really know much about him until England played against Kosovo, and it's Berisha. And I was like, that lad's really good. I need to do a bit of research on him, and he's been around a little bit. And he hit the post and he hit the bar, and then Stephen, how are we going to pronounce this?
difficult name. Skripski.
Scribsky.
Yeah.
We'll run with that. Yeah. He had an absolutely, proper rocket shot, and that also hit the post as well. So it was very, very unfortunate, but it wasn't the greatest game, and I don't think we should talk about that one anymore. But what we will talk about is the game tomorrow night, which is also available to watch on BT Sport, 7:30 p.m. UK time, and that is Werder Bremen versus some team. I don't know who the other team are. You're right there, Flo. Against that's against Bayer Leverkusen. So we'll talk about what we think is going to happen here first, and then we want to know more about your role at Bayer Leverkusen. This should be a straightforward victory for Leverkusen.
It should be, definitely. Like, Bremen is the worst team at home this year. They only got 5 points in their home matches so far. And we are quite good away team. And we're quite good team anyway. But you never know it with Leverkusen. Our team is one team which can beat Bayern Munich and is afterwards very likely to lose against, I don't know, someone from the bottom of the league. So always expect the unexpected with Leverkusen. I hope and I want them to win, but I can imagine that I don't know, that they're somewhere else with their heads or something like that, or not focused, not concentrated, or not winning enough, and maybe they lose. I don't know. This would be a typical way of Leverkusen losing, but still I'm very confident because we have the way better players that we should get those
Sounds
3
so
points
Arsenal,
from the north.
but like Werder Bremen used to be a very, very good side back in the day.
I was
What's
gonna say,
happened to them in the last 10 years?
yeah, because they're in the relegation zone, aren't they? Are they in the relegation zone?
They are in the relegation.
I
They're
know they
second
were,
from bottom.
but they were maybe a little behind Bayern Munich from 2000 to 2010. They had great years, especially with the championship in 2004. They won the cup in 2009 against us, unfortunately. And they were always like the number 2 in Germany in times before Borussia Dortmund rose again. And yeah, they invested too much and couldn't keep going with their investment in terms of success. they didn't qualify for Europe again, and yeah, they declined. And afterwards, they needed to save money, so they needed to sell their best players. And now, since the last couple, 7 or 8 years, they're always playing at the bottom of the table, like between number 8 and number 15. They had a couple of better years, couple of worse years, but yeah, they're not the same they've been 15 years ago. Definitely not. And I don't think that they will climb the table that fast because they still have some financial issues. They're not on the same level like the top 5 clubs because the range is getting wider and wider if you qualify for Champions League or if you're someone who's qualified for Champions League compared to someone who hasn't. And it will be very difficult for Werder Bremen to come back where they've been.
I've got a question. So I want to go, obviously, talk about Werder Bremen struggles there. I want to focus on Leverkusen and one player in particular, which I'm sure a lot of football fans here, or hardcore football fans here in England will know, Kai Havertz. So talk to us, Flo, about, I mean, have you had any dealings at all, or what's the view on Havertz? Has he been known to a lot of fans and in general from a young age, and he's always been kind of this lad here? We've kind of got a bit of a special one in terms of his talent.
I couldn't hear you that good, but I heard you were talking about Kai Havertz, so I'm just gonna go straight forward. I guess what you said is, or what everyone can say, that he definitely is our golden boy in Leverkusen at the moment. He's great abilities. He has a great look over the field. He's trying to lead already at his young ages. He was our captain for several times in the past weeks, and he's a huge promise to the future of German football. And it was like very impressive when he started. He was 17 years ago, 17 years old. 4 years ago, I believe that was. He just won the German under-17 championship with our under-17 team. And a couple of months later, he played in Wembley against Tottenham in front of 90,000 spectators, and still as cool as ice. Yeah, and he's a good goal scorer. He has a good overview over the pitch. He's really, really unbelievable, and it's great luck for us that he plays for Leverkusen at the moment. He had little problems at the beginning of the season or in the middle of the season, but I guess he's over that, and he will be as good as he was in the end of last season again. And there will be no way for us to keep him a very long time in Leverkusen. But we're lucky he still has a 2-year contract, so we don't need to sell him this year if the price doesn't fit. So we will see what happens in summer. But I believe those high-class player and such high-potential player, there will be a club who will pay a huge amount of money for him. And unless someone pays 100 million and more, we won't sell him.
Yeah, exactly. Set his stall out. He's an absolute talent. There's every time I watch him for the national side, where I watch him for you guys, I get excited. He excites me a bit like how Julian Brandt does or did for you guys. You know,
Yeah, actually, best
Rebic,
friends,
no,
the
not
two of
Rebic.
them.
Rebic was Frankfurt. Who's the lad? There was a lad who you had up front not too long ago, but he was like he you play a nice brand of football as well, a bit like the Gladbach style of football. You know, you play. It's quite possession based, but exciting possession based. You're not just passing the ball sideways just to get stats up. You're passing the ball and you find little pockets and you find little holes where things happen and create things and just make it really exciting and easy on the eye to watch. I really think that people should be tuning in tomorrow night, or if you're watching this or listening back to it on Monday later on, to watch Leverkusen and see how they play football. It's a brilliant brand. But I want to know more about you, Flo, and what you do at Bayer Leverkusen.
Okay, I work in the membership department actually from our club, and I have two big membership clubs. I'm working with two target groups, and these are the target groups of the youths, so 13 to 18 years old. I need to acquire a member in this age, and 55 plus, like our senior citizen membership. Those are the most important target groups for me. So I'm doing events for them. I'm in touch with all the fans. I'm like the person they can talk to if they have any questions about Bayer Leverkusen, if they have any needs, any wants, something like that. And my task is to increase our number of members every day, basically. So we have at the moment we have around about 28,000. Our aim is to get 30,000 in the next couple of months, and we will see if we can achieve it. But I can tell you that working with senior citizens is way more interesting, and it's better than working with youth, because the youth, they always like, they have the head here, they have the head there, they have girls, drinks, I don't know, something like that, and football is somewhere else. But the senior citizens, they're like 55 plus, but they're not that old also. So I don't have the 80 years old. I still have some people who can be working, or who you can work with, who you can drink a beer with, who love to go to the stadium, and who haven't been different when they were young. So they were telling me quite often, so when I was your age, I was drunken every weekend, something like that. And it's cool that you're now doing the tours with us. For example, at Union Berlin, I was there with 55 elderly people, so they really enjoyed the match there. And we're doing this through Europe. I've been to Juventus Turin with them in this Champions League group stage, and they love it, and I love it too, because it's like kind of a way to combine my hobby and my job, what makes me very, very happy.
So I've got a question, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me here. So how did you manage to get into working for Leverkusen? How did you manage to get into that job? Would you have a job elsewhere in football and kind of sort of into where you are now in Leverkusen, or was it a case of you wanted to always work in football and you've now managed to find that role within the club that you're at now?
Yeah, it was quite a difficult way. I started with an internship in 2015 when I was a student, and before I could start that internship, my actual boss, and nowadays a good friend of me, refused me 3 times. So he said like, "Oh, I don't want you." I said, I tried it again. He again said, "I don't want you." I tried it again. I don't know. I was talking to his aunt, because Leverkusen is like a small place. We have only like 150,000 inhabitants. So I was trying to pull all strings I could pull, and then he invited me to a talk inside the company. And afterwards, it seems that I performed quite well, because I had an internship for 6 months, and then I was working on a lower basis, just a couple of hours a week. Then it increased, and since 2 years I am fully employed. So
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's just having someone right on the inside of Leverkusen, like, right, okay, and just let you know that every now and then we like to, go abroad and watch the odd game and that. So if we need to get a ticket at Leverkusen, just
you're definitely invited to Leverkusen for sure.
to top on
I
tour.
will I will organize the tickets. I'll show you the best places to go around here. Maybe I'll show you a little of Cologne, which is quite a nice city, although they have a shit football club. But I guess you would have a great time here watching football.
More than likely will. Now, I'm just going to put the fixtures up for next weekend. Of course, next week we've got, well, tomorrow we've got Werder Bremen versus Leverkusen, but on Friday it's the Berlin derby. It's Hertha versus Union Berlin. Don't really think it matters who has home advantage in that. Then we've got on Saturday 2:30. All these games are on the telly box as well, so you'll be able to watch it. It's Borussia Mönchengladbach versus Leverkusen. Ooh, that is the game to watch. Everybody needs to watch that game, and we'll be talking about it all week. Wolfsburg versus Dortmund, Freiburg versus Bremen, Paderborn versus Hoffenheim, and then on Saturday, sorry, that is Saturday. Saturday 5:30, I should say, is Bayern versus Frankfurt. Sunday afternoon, lunchtime, it should say, is Schalke versus Augsburg, and then we've got Mainz versus Leipzig, and the Sunday evening game before our show next week is Cologne versus Dusseldorf. So that is what is going on this week. You've been watching Gav Mack,
Before
Alex Osborn, and Flo for Two Up Top, the weekly football review show for the Bundesliga. This week we've got 5 in midfield, so it's our top 5. So make sure you watch that 7 o'clock on Thursday night, and make sure you also follow all our social media links. They're coming along the bottom of your screen. There's your Twitter page. Yeah, make sure you like that. You should be watching us on Facebook, so like that.
got a question on Flo. Just want to know what he thinks the score is going to be tomorrow evening.
Oh, we'll get that. We'll get that. I'm doing my social media links.
Okay.
And then the YouTube channel. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, as you're meant to be doing that sort of stuff. So yeah, make sure that you tune in to BT. Well, it's going to be on BT Sport. Not that we work for BT Sport or advertise at BT Sport, but it's the only way to watch Bundesliga football in this country legally. So it is Werder Bremen versus Bayer Leverkusen. What are your score predictions, Alex?
So I'm gonna go with a 2-1 victory for Leverkusen. I think both sides, as shown from the rest of the games this weekend, is going to match fitness is not going to be there because we haven't played for 2 months. So, but Leverkusen being the superior team, I would expect them to be the ones to make to get the victory in the end. And I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory there for Leverkusen.
Flo?
I'm going with a 3-1 victory for Leverkusen for sure, because our offense is massive, and I believe that this will be the key to win the match.
Yeah, and I just think it's very leaky at the back for Bremen. They've not had a very good time, and unfortunately for such a big side, it will be a shame for them to go down. I think they will get relegated this season. I'm going with a comfortable 3-0 victory. I can't see Leverkusen shipping a goal. But from everybody at the Two Up Top team, thank you and goodbye.